Hello builders, my name is G. Welcome to the arena. Today I'm going to be doing something that I've watched a lot of other content creators do. I've kind of resisted doing it myself, but got to satisfy the algorithms. So today we're going to be doing a react video. I don't really want to be the passive react video where you're just looking at me going and hawing at stuff. I'm going to try to make it as educational as possible. We're going to be looking at companies pitching. I was actually at this event. It's at Techstars Boston's most recent demo day. I'm going to be trying to take an objective point of view, taking my experience as an angel investor and as a multiple-time founder, and kind of taking a look at these pitch decks and evaluating them. And just because of how people kind of pay attention to things these days, I'm going to rank them on a tier list, right? From S all the way down to F. I have high expectations for these pitches. I've watched them already in person, but honestly, I don't remember them, which may or may not be a good thing. But I'll watch them fresh, and I'll give my impressions on how well they did, what things they can work on, and where they stack up against each other. I'll probably try to do a lot more of these React videos on different pitches from different accelerators. I know that Jason Calcanis's accelerator puts out their company pitches publicly. Some others, different Techstars programs, for example, do that. And who knows, maybe I'll even do some reviews of different Shark Tank pitches. So we're starting there at Techstars Boston, and let's jump into it.
I was raised by a family of obstetricians. My mother, her sister, her brother, all worked in maternal care. My mother passionately worked on improving maternal care outcomes in her home country of Yemen as a physician and as a Berkeley researcher. I personally fell in love with coding at the age of 9 and then grew up to become an AI engineer. But growing up around my mother's work, I became acutely aware of the growing problems in pregnancy care. The United States...
Just kind of note, like, that's a really great personal story. Kind of shows, like, a personal attachment of, like, what we're going to be seeing, right? Something about obstetrician. I know nothing about, up to this point, right? I don't know much about what the business is, but you've kind of localized it to something about obstetrician. You have a personal connection to it. It's in the family, right? So those are kind of some of the things that are in my head, right? Some of the stuff about being an engineer, AI, you're kind of leading me towards like something obstetrician AI. Something that might be a theme when I go over a lot of pitches is you try to remove as much from the pitch that someone might, what I like to call like trip over, right? So, you're creating a path of understanding, right, is the metaphor I like to use. And you don't want to leave behind, little, potholes or, banana peels on the road for someone to slip on, trip over, fall over, right? And so when you try to create a pitch, your story, all the information that you provide, you don't want to create pieces of information that people get hung up on, right? And so the more clear you are in what message, what kind of frame of thought that the viewer is in, right? Whether it be an investor, a prospective client, or everything in between. Just kind of think about that, right? How you're telling your story, what are potential things that someone could get hung up on, and start thinking about, right? So far, the story was pretty good, talking about starting off as an AI engineer or something. Maybe more something that I would put with the team slide and the information about the team. It's kind of your personal credentialing. And so those are kind of my thoughts there.
is in a prenatal care crisis. $16 billion are lost annually as a result of preventable maternal care complications. With the increasing shortage of obstetricians, the growing rate in pregnancy complications, and with new legislation negatively impacting maternal diagnostics, it's becoming more difficult to identify these problems early enough to prevent tragic outcomes.
So this is like a problem slide, and it's pretty, acutely a problem slide. Now, the thing that I'm noting with this problem slide is I don't understand who this is a problem is for, right? So prenatal complications, that would tell me that that's an issue. The problem is for the mother, right? Shortage of OBGYNs maybe a mother problem, but also a hospital problem. Growing rate of pregnancy complications, so that's a mother problem. Roe v. Wade overturning equals diagnostic difficulty. Kind of partially an OBGYN slash mother problem because it could be a problem for the care provider or a problem for the mother. Like when I'm talking about clearing the road of any potential hazards as I'm trying to go on the path of understanding, like explicitly, this is a problem for who, right? So when you start telling about the problems, I shouldn't have to do the work to kind of piece together who this potentially could be, because every point of confusion distracts me from the pitch and makes it harder for me to understand it.
In the developed world, half of pregnant patients with a fetal malformation are misdiagnosed due to errors by ultrasound operators. The and capturing of ultrasound screenings is the leading reason for the misdiagnosis of the mass majority of fetal abnormalities.
So this is like an extension of the problem slide. You have like problem plus, right? The other one may have been more of like the problem around the environment, but this is like a primary problem. Operator error. Again, from the context of the pitch itself, sort of tells me like this is probably a mother thing, but like operator errors, right? If I'm just, I'm thinking about the last slide, and then all of a sudden I'm cluing into this slide, missing some of the things that someone said. The things on the slides are to refocus me. Operator error, well, that could be something that a hospital is concerned about, the OBGYN, right? It shows me a lack of potential focus if I'm not understanding, is this company for the mothers or is it for the OBGYNs, right? Is this a consumer product or is this a B2B product? And now I'm kind of twisting in my head because, again, if I'm an investor and my firm is focused on B2B companies or B2C, and again, I'm from the context of this whole pitch event, right? I'm watching all these pitches, I might be focused more so on B2B companies if that's what my firm really cares about. So I might check out, even subconsciously, if a company sounds kind of B2C, right? And I think a lot of B2B companies try to frame it as a B2C company. If you are able to create a focus around a user story, that's great. Make it very explicit that it's a B2B company. You're just focusing on an individual user, right? In this case, I'm not 100% sure what's going on here, right? Is this a B2C company? Is this a B2B company? And I know that we're only like a minute in, but like this could have been so much clearer from the get.
But at BioticsAI, we're doing something to fix this. We're helping obstetricians identify these anomalies earlier with improved frequency and greater efficiency.
Right, so you just see there, obstetricians, they're helping the obstetricians, right? So this sounds like it's a B2B product, it's an AI product for that stuff, right? But like a lot of the previous conversations made me think it was like some form of B2C product for the mothers, right? That it's like some form of maternal care, right? So you can see where the confusion lies, and then all of a sudden I'm like, there's like a bit of whiplash. You're like, oh, okay, the thing that I thought that this was is not, right? And now I have to like rethink about the startup. It's like starting from fresh again.
BioticsAI is a vendor-agnostic, cloud-based software that will plug into any ultrasound machine to localize.
Oh no, I'm always worried when there's a video and a thing, and in the case of a video, right? You are trying to show, but I'm distracted from what this gentleman is saying because I'm focused on the video.
Fetal malformations, bringing them to the attention of the obstetrician. Will facilitate the appropriate capture.
Like you had that awkward pause just because of logistics, right? There's probably a better way to be able to structure this in the slides, right, with words or something like that. This is some form of product demo, but there's better ways of representing this within a user story, like, hey, this is obstetrician Gina, right? She's been working in the field for 20 years. We've been working with her for the last 3 months. She's really concerned about the quality of, maternal care in this country. 50%, she's worried about the 50%, misdiagnosis rate. And she would really like help in this. We provide this product to be able to help her do X, Y, and Z. Show what the flaws are in the existing system, then show how your product changes that, right? But you can say it in more theoretical terms. If you don't have an actual obstetrician, create a person. So grab that customer testimonial and work off of their user story instead of just showing me the dashboards and, oh, this person should be looking at this. You were like circling like a little value in a thing. And I'm like, I have no context of what that is, right? And unless you're narrowing it down specifically for investors who are very knowledgeable about, the OBGYN process, I'm willing to guarantee that even like investors who have been doctors or in the healthcare field need a little bit of either a refresher or, a bit of knowledge into this very specific use case, right? When you niche down as a startup, that's a good thing. But when you explain it, just because you're niche down, investors even in the field need a little bit of a refresher, and a user story is the most streamlined way to be able to do it.
Capture of over 90 different anatomical views and structures, ensuring the patient gets a complete and diagnostically viable ultrasound scan, and then uses AI to extract all this information to automatically generate reports and documentation, adding both accuracy and efficiency to the diagnostic process. We conducted clinical...
So, like, I think of me as like a tech-savvy and science-savvy enough person to try to figure out some of those things, but I have no personal connection to it. Young scout of such and such firm may or may not have a particular understanding of these things, right? And so, I don't think those videos were very effective. Be a lot more effective if you just kind of broke it down using an OBGYN as an individual example and kind of walk through, this is what they're doing, this sucks because of X, Y, and Z. Hey, because of our product, they're able to do this now, which solves X, Y, and Z. All right, some metrics. So this is traction. Seems in more of deep tech and more in scientific. You might have to say like proof that this thing actually works and functions. Totally cool. In some other companies, maybe like, if you were a dating app, you'd say, oh my God, we've produced this many results and matches and all that type of stuff. In some other companies, you may not have as tangible of metrics. So, these numbers might be a little bit different, more businessy focused stuff like user retention and user satisfaction, NPS score, whatever. But in the case of medical and in the deep tech context, right, you might be talking about more clinical data to show, the proof is in the pudding.
Studies on obstetricians that historically performed poor quality ultrasound scans. When BioticsAI was used, the overall completeness rate of their screenings went up by 20%. Additionally, we saved up to 8 minutes per patient on documentation and review time. Hospitals are incentivized to purchase our solution through the ROI that we're providing. We're increasing patient reimbursement and increasing patient volume. Every user on our platform generates $9,000 per.
So the hospital is the customer, right? And so the customer in this case is probably the head of gynecology, I believe, is it whatever the head of the department that OBGYNs work in. That's the customer, and their problem set, should be focused on what is that 50% misdiagnosis costing the hospital, right? Because if you're going to talk about hospital ROI there, and the hospital is the person actually making the purchasing decision, from an investor perspective, I need to understand what the hospital user case is, right? So, we bounced from mothers to OBGYNs, and now we're revealing halfway through the pitch that hospitals are the actual customers. So, you can start to see where these, pitfalls in the path of me understanding your business are arising.
per month for their respective healthcare institutions through the utility of our application.
I will note though that, $9,000 from a B2B context, savings wise, right? Sounds decent. It's not generating additional revenue. There's not going to be more people going to an OBGYN at this hospital because they have this solution. This is more of a preventative / reduction, risk reduction, right? So there's increased volume that they're listing there. I don't know if that's particularly true. You're gonna have to show numbers to show that there's increased volume there, right? The time savings I understand because you're reducing stuff, and that'll produce savings. But in terms of increasing volume, does not increase ROI. It's a revenue increase, right? So per individual customer, I don't know if there's a return on investment per user, but there might be a return on investment for the product writ large, right? So it's kind of a thing to note there.
Now, to build out this technology,
Yeah, so there's no kind of more numbers about that. Like, if we're talking about that user story from earlier, right? And now I'm gonna have to pivot it to the hospital because the hospital is the actual customer. Mass General Hospital in Boston is one of our pilot customers. They are saving $9,000 per person because our AI is able to diagnose stuff more accurately and more efficiently than through a manual process. All that we need for the OBGYNs now is to just review, make sure there's no error, and that makes for a much more efficient process. We probably saved 2 to 3 minutes of discussion beforehand by just going with the user story, having a cleaner story, and getting to the brass tacks of this company and its products.
it took a world-class team of obstetricians and machine learning engineers from institutions like the University of Pennsylvania, IBM Watson, the ICOG, and Kaiser Permanente.
That's another really impressive, I'll just go back here real quick. That is a really impressive team. Always am worried whenever I see a company working in healthcare and there are no doctors or, people with a medical background. So presumably these chief medical officer, and this is due diligence that you're going to do, chief medical officer, clinical strategist, presumably doctors who worked in the field in OBGYN, as an OBGYN or in charge of that department would even be better. In some cases, if the team does not have direct influence, that's when you might see the board of advisors providing their own credibility. But I would say on the team directly as opposed to, or on the team is a better look than a board of advisors, because board of advisors, part-time role, you're trying to reach out to them, they may or may not answer within a timely fashion, especially when there's an emergency. Someone who's on the team, there's an expectation that they're full-time and that they're going to be there, to provide guidance, to provide assistance in customer success, so on and so forth as needed. So, it's good to see that there's, all this kind of strong team background.
Pennsylvania, IBM Watson, the ICOG, and Kaiser Permanente. Now, we started Techstars 3 months ago with the intention of increasing customer traction and giving our startup a boost. But not only did we accomplish that, we surpassed it. We recruited 2 world-leading opinion leaders and obstetrics diagnostic ultrasound onto our advisory council, initiated new pilots at 3 new healthcare institutions, and we added 9 new hospitals onto our wait list.
So, when I see 3 hospital institutions, right, you weren't shy about the logos in the team slide. Don't be shy in the logos when you're talking about pilots. And, name names, because that's more credibility that you can lend to your startup when you're able to name who the hospitals are, right? And, maybe you're worried, if it's a small hospital, big hospital, whatever, traction is traction, right? And, maybe this is a conversation point that you're willing to understand, like, hey, in due diligence, I got to make sure I know who these 3 healthcare institutions are. They're aware that you're actually running a pilot. You're not just like working with one of their doctors, and maybe the doctor's providing a little bit of advice and you count that as a pilot. Not saying that that's the case here, but those are the steps, those are the things that you would kind of suss out in due diligence. By putting the logo, I'm not saying that the due diligence is going to be skipped. It's going to be a lighter touch. Like, hey, can you just, show me the email chain, or, show me, have the person at that place email me, right? And, for an angel investor, you're probably not going to ask for that much proof, but maybe just be like, hey, show me, get a little written note from them, or show me in your data room, the written note that, hey, we are willing to enter into a pilot agreement with such and such company, paid or unpaid, don't care. Like, just make sure that it's documented, right, within your data room. And if you name names, it's easier. I'm just like, boom, 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 three of them, 3 letters, we're good, right? And in terms of like making a lasting memory, if I'm like, oh, this company, BioticsAI, like they're working with, Brigham and Mass General and Tufts, like 3 names, like I'm going to be able to rattle that off too, because, those names are colloquial enough to work on it. If it's smaller hospitals, Lawrence General, Lowell General, those still stick in your head. There's kind of stuff to note in that space.
And in between all that, we also went to San Francisco to compete against 3,000 other startups and come in first place at the world's largest startup competition at TechCrunch Disrupt.
Right.
Now, our unfair advantage lies in our continuously growing data moat, where today we have access to 8 million ultrasound images.
I put this a little bit, when you were doing your product demo, I'd probably pair this together. This is your unique value proposition. This is your how. So it probably goes with your why and your what. Like, why are you doing this? What are you doing? Right? This is how. Just pair all those things together. Putting it at the end kind of makes it feel like it's an afterthought. Pair it with the rest of the discussion about your product.
That continuously growing data moat allows us.
Something I noticed there, it says 10 global pilots initiated, but you talked about 9 hospitals. So a little disconnect there. That would probably be a question that I would bring up if there was a internal thing. Like, what does that mean? Because there were actually 3 hospitals, and then there are 9 hospitals on the wait list. So what does global pilots mean? Right? Is that 10 individual doctors at these 3 hospitals? Be clear with the numbers. Let's make sure all the numbers line up and make sense, right? Again, they may make sense through questioning or, by doing the math and figuring it out, but like, just make it as smooth as possible. Don't over-explain stuff, but line up all the stuff so that at a glance, boom, 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 all the bullets make sense.
Sound images. That continuously growing data moat allows us to build out new algorithms for new indications and expand into new markets like gynecology, urology, and neonatology.
So there's no discussion about TAM, which in some cases, hey, maybe the startup can't calculate TAM. I'm not going to say that's a red flag. It's like a yellow flag. I'm a little bit worried if a company can't effectively understand how big their market is, right? Because you could be selling into a really small market, right? So, without the context of what the TAM is, when you're talking about expanding markets, I have no clue. Do each of these have their own TAMs, right? Total addressable markets, or are they separate? Are they inclusive with each other? Like, if you got all of the market, what is the total of that, right? Like, barring even any discussion about competitors, like, what would, if you won 100%, what would that look like? This is, without context, kind of meaningless. It's just big numbers. And in a space like this, there's probably going to be a lot of different AI SaaS companies, right? All taking a slice of 2 billion, 4 billion, 8 billion, 16 billion, right? And when we look at a slide like that, right, it shows this kind of exponential growth, right? But my question would be, why wouldn't you start at the biggest one? Why skip the 4 and the 8, just go to the 16. are these graduating things? And maybe that's me not understanding medical terms that go along with it. But yeah, it's confusing to me.
Allowing us to reach our vision of becoming the AI diagnostics platform for reproductive health. Join us in our mission to make sure that every single pregnant mother gets the quality care and diagnostic ultrasound that they need. Thank you very much.
So, great class. The hospitals were the actual customers, and there was very little actual discussion about what the hospital needs and wants are. If you're able to name names, always name names, right? Whether it's the individual OBGYN, there's a face to the story. I'm here to invest in order to help said person out, right? It's a mother, OBGYN, the hospital administrator, again, like, there's some parts where you're like, when you create a story, you want to have someone to have compassion for, right? And the hospital administrator might be more of like a selfish compassion for, because you're just looking to get something out of them. There's not really this like altruistic, want to help them out, more, selfish. OBGYN, maybe a little bit more like 50-50, like, okay, they're doing their job, and, their job's hard enough, so, okay, great. There's a little bit of altruism, there's a little bit of market opportunity there, and then, if your story was around the mother, probably a lot more towards altruism, right? Like 80-20 split, right? 80% altruism, 20% there's an actual company opportunity here. But as it turns out in this pitch, the hospitals are the customers. Seems to be that's what they're paying for. There's no discussion of what their revenue model was. So I don't know how much these hospitals are being paid. From my interpretation of it, it would seem like this startup at the time of this recording, they don't even know how much they're going to charge the hospital. Totally fair, especially if you're in unpaid pilot land. That's a discussion between experienced mentors who've worked with selling to hospitals, and people who have worked as a hospital administrator to be able to provide estimates of this product, which seemed comparable to yours, charges this much. You're probably going to be able to get away with the same. Obviously this is a really great team. There's actual doctors in a healthcare company, which is rare, to say the least. But yeah, I think overall, good job. Maybe a little bit more energy needed, but obviously for a lot of founders, nerve-wracking. Totally understand. But a little bit more energy for guys. Strong stance. And especially if you have a microphone one hand on the other. Accentuate. Be able to know how your movements are, right? No nervous stepping, no nothing. So you did pretty good in that realm, right? But back straight, back straight, head up, get into it, right? So overall, good job. Let's go to the tier list. All right, so we're on the tier list here, and when we're looking at the evaluation here, right, the grading criteria, just to allow for people, you can pause, take a look at it. Just kind of thinking about it, stunning metrics, 3 hospitals, 9 on the wait list, so a total of 12 hospitals. I don't know what the revenue model is, so I have no frame of reference for how lucrative that is. I know what the top end is. I think I saw 2 billion. Again, all working off of memory. I'm not looking at it. Which goes towards how memorable some of this stuff is. I think it was like they're able to save $9,000. So, maybe a ballpark estimate would be like 20 grand. Oh wait, was that per month? I think user per month. So 12 months. So, I would probably try to. And again, not the specialist in getting that, but just thinking about how much they're saving per user and how much early this product has. They didn't really say how many, or at least I don't remember how many patients there are. So probably put it in a ballpark of 25K ish, right, per hospital. So 12 times 25K, right? So monthly recurring revenue, pretty good for a startup if they're able to lock it all down. But presume that maybe, well, what would be a hit rate, like a 20% hit rate? So 20% of 12 is like, shoot, 5 parts, so 2 to 3-ish hospitals. So 3 hospitals, 25K, 75K MRR. Pretty good. Pretty good for a first-year startup, right? Probably going to need to be maybe 1 or 2 years in for that to actually fully realize. So in terms of, evaluating it from this chart, which is purely a business evaluation. Again, all the loves to these founders. It's hard. You're in the Techstars family now. Welcome. So I'm rooting for you regardless. I'd probably put this company in terms of like my evaluation for it, where it's at, and where it could potentially going. Probably leaning towards a C that can be a B with a little bit of clarification. So, it'll be nice. It'll be like a little collage as I try to figure out how to fit the companies in. I don't know if they have like a little, if that icon is necessarily their logo, but I'll put in their full name just to make it more apparent. So yeah, they're at a C. Let's move on to the next startup. Alright, so I totally forgot to put BioticsAI in the pitch deck and the pitch tier list. So, just in terms of like the pitch deck itself, I'll be honest, it's kind of healthcare bland, in my opinion, which is fine for a deep tech company. It's nothing really that super stood out to me. Felt very vanilla. I think it's passable, so I'll probably give it like a low C. It's just boring in my opinion. In terms of the pitch, I think the CEO is good at executing the pitch. Obviously, I had my own issues about it, and typically the format and the lack of storytelling. Really, there's a personal connection which gives you a little bit of points, but in terms of like just the overall structure and some things that we discussed earlier, I'd probably give the pitch overall, like, if there was like an in-between, I'd probably put it there, but just because, they had that strong personal connection at the beginning, I'll give it a like lower C, but I'm a pretty hard grader when it comes to pitch stuff, so I thought they did fine. I think a C is like average, right? I guess the scale from like S to F, right? Like F is like no go, your pitch turned me off, like I'm not happy about it. D is like there's red flags. C is like it's a solid pitch, nothing to write home about. And then obviously, the more I like it, B, A, to S tier is like, holy crap, I need to reach out to these founders right away. So, S tier, obviously, pretty difficult, and, we'll see who gets it. Let's now actually move on to the next startup.
Next-gen sequencing has transformed human potential. The ability to rapidly and cheaply analyze thousands of genes launched personalized medicine. And the next revolution in biology is driven by proteins.
So I'll just pause right there. Like, one of the things that I want to note about, like, maybe this is my personal preference, so I won't say that this is something that fits all necessarily, but let's just think about this in a couple different directions. One, if you come from a science background, you're more likely to go in a lecture mode and academia mode, right? And that's not necessarily what a pitch is about, right? It's about future, forward-looking, like, this is the vision of what's going to go on in the future, but unfortunately we live in the now, so we need to fix X, Y, and Z for X, Y, and Z specific people. So whenever a pitch starts and, you're talking about gene sequencing and all these types of things. That's great. That sounds more like a TED Talk than a, company pitch, right? And I understand that you might be trying to set the environment. Well, the easiest way to be able to set the, stage for your company pitch is to start with a customer story. I understand this is where you're kind of working in genomic sequencing, but, what is the objective of this pitch? Is it to reach out to a general audience so that everyone kind of understands it? Or is the objective to attract investors who intuitively understand genetic sequencing? In which this case, this pitch kind of seems more like, credentialing, maybe? Like an appeal to, like, I know what I'm talking about, but that seems very much like a high school, maybe early college level presentation where you're just trying to present on a topic that a professor or a teacher assigned to you, right? And you're trying to showcase that, hey, I actually learned the material, right? And that's not what a company pitch is about. Your team slide is all your credentialing and, your proof in this is, my background, what I've done in my past. It's not for the beginning of the pitch, and I don't want to get lectured at, right? And again, potentially personal preference, but in my opinion, like, if I'm thinking from the mindset of, like, I'm someone who invests into genomics and bioengineering, biotech, I probably know these things already. You're reiterating them to me. I'm getting lectured at. I'm subconsciously tuning stuff out. So let's get back into it.
Deeply understanding cells through expression of many proteins has created a new class of immune therapies which activate our immune systems to find and kill cancers and repair the body. But current tools are time-consuming, expensive, and difficult to use.
So the pitch deck is supposed to be there to support what you're saying, right? And so when you really think about it, right, the background of what you're talking about when you're doing a presentation and you're standing on stage and you have the thing in the back, your pitch slide in the back, like, it's supposed to support what you're saying, right? So when you're on this kind of positive messaging in the slide here, right, you have the positive message of all these things that are going to revolutionize the world and all that type of stuff. Then when you transition into the problem, the slide does not support what you're saying, right? And so when you really try to design and create your pitch deck, it's about using the stuff that's on screen to support what you're saying, adding a bit more flavor, or if someone's tuning out, not paying attention for whatever reason, if they zoom back in, you said something that, like, hooks them back again. When they look at the screen, okay, that's my takeaway, right? At a glance, whatever point you wanted to make within the context of that portion of the pitch, that's what the takeaway is. There's 3 different things here, none of which are related to the problem. So.
Apeture Bio can make this happen at scale. Our single-cell analysis platform is 1,000 times more sensitive than existing tech, deriving greater insights from much less material. Hardware agnostic, gentle and completely non-toxic, preserving precious clinical samples, and 33 times faster at analyzing cancer biopsies than the leading incumbent.
So if we used a example with a customer, right, like a genomics researcher, genetics researcher, whatever the actual term is, right, someone who's doing single cell analysis, right, that lady right there, great, put a name to her. Hey, this is Susan, and Susan is doing X, Y, and Z. She's doing single cell analysis. She has these particular commercial microscopes, right, and it takes her this amount of time to be able to do it. Right? And just think about the amount of, and again, I don't know the exact science, so I'm just going to, like, say stuff, but, like, it kind of fits the story narrative, right? Like, she has to go through, 1,000 samples, right? And if it takes her a week to do each one, then that's 1,000 weeks, and that's going to take her years to do this. Well, hey, if we're 33 times faster, right, then we've reduced it down to, an X amount of time period, and she can go through this many samples than before. Great. That's supposing that the individual researcher is the customer, which I highly doubt. Maybe it's more of a research consortium or the university itself or something like that. So, again, always thinking about who's the customer, who's the person actually paying for it, what are their motivations, why would they be paying for it, right? So I have no context of any of that stuff, and that might be the running theme for these pitches. It's not a knock on, like, the program as a whole, but I just think that, it's kind of an easy way to contextualize these data points that are being put on screen right now. Like, I don't know why 1,000 times more sensitive is important, right? You didn't tell me. None of the slides previously, even though you gave like a minute-long lecture about that stuff, I have no clue why we need to be gentle, right? If you told it as a part of a story with a main character that is your customer, right? We might understand why these metrics matter. Other than the kind of buzzwordy marketing sound of a lot of these, right? A lot of these compatible with commercial microscopes, like, that should be kind of assumed, right? Unless that's like a particular pain point, but that should probably be assumed, right? Especially if someone's worked in a field, right? Compatibility with existing platforms, kind of a must in the B2B space. So, just kind of intuiting like what people are should already know, especially from your intended audience. If it's an investor group, compatibility with commercial microscopes, that's probably like an easy check. Like, yes, I assume that that's the case, right? So a lot of these sound more markety, buzzwordy than actually, something useful.
Here is our tech in real time.
Video.
What you just saw in 10 seconds currently takes 1 month in early stage drug development.
Great. Put this before the other thing, right? Like, imagine staring at this for a month, right? And, hey, we've been able to reduce it down to 10 seconds. Right? Like, whoa, that's a cool visual. Like, Susan had to stare at this for an entire month before she actually got her results. Using our technology, she can now reduce that down to 10 seconds. Like, I don't know if that's 33 times, but like, that's so much of a better way to structure the story than kind of laying out all these metrics and then showing it, right? It's like cart before horse.
Unlocking this gain for pharma
A lot
represents
simpler and
tens
it's
of
faster
millions
too.
of dollars of value. And this is one of many opportunities of Apeture's technology in the global market for life science research tools. We're targeting a TAM of $12 billion in cell biology and translational research, with an immediate opportunity to unlock $2 billion in pent-up value that currently exists across an install base of fluorescent microscopes with which our assay is interoperable.
So, just going back to this slide real quick, I would have assumed that the 67 billion is the actual TAM, and the 12 billion is the selectable addressable market, like the niche in which this company is deciding to, out of the global life science tools, which is the TAM, like, they've chosen to address a specific thing. Now, that being said, I guess the way that they put it is, their tool or their platform is not for all life sciences, but the quintessential part to, like, the TAM analysis is the potential for the expansion of the product, right? And when you build a platform like this and it's for cell research, well, this $12 billion TAM is the particular use case for the product in its current form. if we add on additional stuff, then we can start to address some of the other 67 billion things, right? So when we talk about like product expansion or market expansion, right, 67 billion out of the whole life science tools, that's the total addressable market of the platform fully realized. But the 12 billion is the selectable because you've chosen that to be the initial beachhead niche that you're going to be targeting. You know, that's the market that your product in the MVP that you've created, the version 1 product that you're going to release with, that's what it's going to be able to address, right? And the selectable obtainable market, right, that's your, you know, you have personal connections with, you're able to reach out, they're on the wait list. We assume that we can capture these people. That's the SOM, SAM, and TAM. So the slide is not the best execution of that, in my opinion. All right, back to it.
We monetize by selling patented reagent kits. And along with these, a SaaS software that comprises...
So, and I apologize for continuing to pause, right? But I feel like this pitch needs a little bit of work. And not a knock on the founder. I'm sure she's really great. But nothing in the customer story, none of the background that you gave, the 2 minutes discussion, really discussed anything about needing reagent kits, right? Maybe it's a implied thing, knowledge that you've had beforehand, but without the customer story, I wouldn't have known that she needed reagent kits. I would have assumed they just needed the software licensing for the tool that's installed within a computer that's connected to the microscope, and that the software product was the only thing. But I guess now there's reagent kits as well. So, you know, was not well articulated. So this is coming as a bit of a surprise. Like, where do these reagent kits fit in? How often are they needed? You know, maybe if I'm like a researcher and I do it a lot, maybe I'd understand this. But you know, just from a glance here, not quite clear.
is a digital research partner, transforming a process that is currently done on pen and paper onto Apeture's cloud, providing predictive experiment planning suggestions and data analysis. To date, our technology has been used in 7 peer-reviewed publications across head and neck, colorectal, and brain cancer. We're building customer design partnerships to prove out new and exciting use cases of our technology, starting at UPenn. And we're testing our MVP in Merck's Digital Sciences Studio.
Okay, before we go to the team slide, let's just go back to this. So when we think about traction, right, and especially in deep tech, I understand it's slow, 3 months in going through the Techstars program. It's not a lot of time to be able to build up a lot of traction. From an investor perspective, and I guess not understanding because it's not articulated, what the go-to-market actually looks like and what the typical sales cycle looks like. Because you showed your business model, but I don't understand who this is actually being sold to. Is it to the individual researchers? Is it to the universities? Like peer review publications tells me it's directly to the researchers, right? Which means that how do you sell to them? How do you get to them? All that type of stuff. It's just unclear, right? I don't see what design partnership is for. Like, what are we designing? You know, it says via pilots with leading, like, illustrate novel use cases. I don't know what that, it's not, is that a pilot? Are we using design partnerships in place of pilot? I don't think that's really illustrative of what's going on. And then, you know, you're going into another incubator. Cool. I know the Merck Digital Science Studios. Shout out Jeff. Yeah, cool, I guess.
As CEO, I bring experience growing medtech businesses, and our Chief Scientific Officer, Hannah Peterson, has a PhD in biomedical engineering and completed her postdoc at Massachusetts General Hospital in computational pathology. We're joined by a world-class team of scientific and business advisors. If you're excited by our science and our mission, please, let's talk. Thank you.
All right. I think that pitch was lacking in clarity in a bunch of different places. I've reiterated that already. I don't quite understand, like, who. I still don't actually know what the customer is. With the last company, I kind of pieced it together, right? The hospitals were the ones who were actually purchasing. The reason that I harp so much on the customer, right? If you're an investor, like, and it goes back to, like, who's the intended audience? Like, if I'm an investor, I need to be able to see that, like, hey, this company is going to be able to use my money to, like, go and seek out X group and execute and show that they're good, right? So that they can get follow-on investment from someone else, right? Or, that I'm willing to re-up because they said that they were going to hit X, Y, and Z milestone, and bam, check in next few months, they've hit it, right? Next year, whatever, right? And bam, they've hit it. Great. Let's reevaluate and potentially put more money in, right? That's from the investor perspective. But I don't know who the customer is. I don't know who to intro. I don't know if my Rolodex is actually effective in having, like, a forwardable base, right? If you send me a forwardable, like, I'd love to beat X, Y, and Z person. I didn't understand from this pitch whether or not that works, right? Or that's a fit. And then from the customer perspective, like, if I'm a prospective customer or I'm a mentor and I'm like, hey, my cousin, I think, works in this, but I'm not 100% sure if, I should be introing this person to that, right? So either you're going to be having a messy inbox with stuff that, wasn't really clear. Maybe I can provide an intro to this person. Is that the right person? Like, you can see how, like, there's easy ways to just use a story to streamline this pitch so that a lot of things become clear, the context becomes clear, and then the business as a whole just easy to understand. This is an amazing opportunity. Invest in us now. And I did not get that from this pitch. I'm sure that they're going to do really great things, and all's the best to them. They're part of the Techstars family for now, for good. And I'll be rooting for them. But just from this pitch, did not inspire a lot of, clarity or confidence in what's going on. So with just some tweaks, like, who's the customer? Like, this is the customer story. This is what they're currently doing. This is what, using our product, they could be doing better. And this yields them X, Y, and Z. And that's discernible value that they really love to have. Great. Like, just starting with that, spending a minute on that instead of the lecture about the future of genomics and genetic whatever, to discussion about some form of problem, and I don't even remember it, right? And then into what I thought was actually a really nice demonstration of, like, hey, look at how fast this process is, but I have no context about why that process is faster or why it matters to a customer, like why they would actually pay for it, right? So maybe if I worked in the field, it'd be like, whoa, mind-blowing, but, like, just from what was in the pitch itself, not the most revealing. So all in all, I think it's fixable, but as of right now, let's head over to the tier list, and I'll give my proper evaluation. All right, we're back to the tier list. I actually need to stick this in each one of these. So let's start from just Techstars tier list as a whole. Again, I don't think I've actually met this founder, so no, this is professional evaluation, nothing personal, but just from what I've seen in the pitch and my understanding of the business, there's this company I'm going to be assuming is, like, super early, and there might be great potential in it, but I wasn't really able to distill that from the pitch, nor understand who the customer is, the business model, basic, SaaS model with some form of hardware recurring revenue. um, or commoditized recurring revenue. But I'm not 100% sure. Is it the universities who are buying it? Is it the researchers themselves? Companies, like pharmaceutical companies? Like, I have no clue. Maybe if I worked in the field, I would know. But, just from my perspective and from my understanding, I'm not 100% sure where this company is going. And hey, look, a lot of startups, it's chaos at the beginning. You might not have the answers to this. Maybe you do. If you had the answers, it wasn't clearly articulated. If you don't, totally fine. You're early on in the journey. You'll get better. The grades are just for a snapshot of where you are right now. I would probably say D with maybe some clarifications. You can get to a C. So again, this is a professional evaluation, nothing personal. I would just say that, needs improvement is probably the thing that I would probably evaluate this company on. As for the pitch deck, a big plus is that one slide where you had the video, and yes, I cringe whenever I see a video because, oh my god, it could break. You're taking somebody out of it. I'm sure there's a better way to illustrate it in a visual format. But honestly, the 10 seconds was potentially striking. I'm assuming, I have no awareness into the industry, but I'm going to assume that something going from either 10 months or 1 month to 10 seconds, it's obviously an incredible improvement for either of those. Even the month to 10 seconds, great. That's amazing. That should be the focal point of the presentation. Hey, Susan, I think was the stand-in character that I created. Susan is one of our early beta users. Usually it would take her a month. She's staring at a sample that looks like this for a whole month and it takes her, and she has to do this for 200 samples or whatever, right? And, wouldn't it be great if she could do it in a shorter period of time? Well, hey, guess what? Using our platform, we take what is usually a 1 month process and turn it into a 10-second process. Whoa, and here's the visual proof, right, on the slide. It's it took a minute. Could have skipped the science lecture at the beginning and understood who the customer is, or at least the user, and know what their story is, know what their motivation is, know what their problem is, and then know how your company is providing the solution for it, right? And probably with the reagent kit, hey, using our patented reagent kit and software, reference that, especially if you're going to use it as a focal point of a business model later on. So, I'm putting words in their mouth, so that what I would assume would sound like a bitter pitch, but obviously there are facts of how their product actually works, the facts of the user story, so on and so forth. I'm just piecing stuff together from their pitch. I would say not a immediate no, but I'd probably say it's so lacking. And I think I said for the last company that D is a red flag. I think maybe I'll recalibrate what I think of stuff. F is probably red flag, no go. D is it's not leaving a good impression on me. And then C is okay, solid. I'll probably not too memorable. But yeah. So there's that. And then in terms of the presentation, it's a very I immediately got PTSD from college or whatever. It's professor lecturing vibes. So I guess I'll give it a well, maybe I'll bump this guy up a little bit to average, and then put this lady down to C-ish D. I mean, it's not a lot of energy. Didn't really feel a good vibe from it. That day was pretty cold, so like everyone might have been sick. So maybe we'll like provide a pass there, but like, there's a little bit of energy, a little bit charisma, you're just getting ready to go, just not feeling that, especially when you're creating some form of like, this is the tent pole presentation, this is demo day. Techstars is going to be disseminating this. Guys like me are going to be reacting to it or reviewing it, right? Investors are going to be looking at it. Like, this is your chance to put your best foot forward. And so I get nerves, I get all that stuff. So, but just like, hey, I'm excited and I'm loving this. I want to be here and I'm excited to work for the future, right? But don't want to take too much on that, but yeah. So those are my evaluations. D tier for this one, D on the pitch deck, and like a C minus ish for the pitch itself. Yeah, definitely a lot of open space for improvement. Just using the user story, probably like just having a tight user story would probably boost this up to like a B or an A, right? And A, especially if you're like, holy crap, because it takes them this long, like a month, as opposed to 10 seconds. Like, hey, this saves them $1,000 per month or whatever, right? And companies are pining over this, right? I mean, it's just the way that you articulate it. But anyways, that's it for this company. On to the next one.
Hello everyone, my name is Alex Toth, CEO of InStockRX, a peer-to-peer marketplace for pharmacies. I've been a pharmacist and pharmacy owner for over 12 years, and I'm going to show you today why every single pharmacy out there needs to be using InStockRX. The typical pharmacy misses out on up to $500,000 a year in revenue due to mismanaged inventory. In fact, in this photo right here, my technicians, Dawn and Susie, are throwing away about $12,000 worth of medications. And as a healthcare provider, this is unfortunate because I see patients facing drug supply chain issues and medication shortages every single day. These medications...
Sorry to interrupt, but wow. Very good. Like, their characters that I can follow. His particular pharmacy, he has his own employees, right? I understand the problem. It seems to be a problem of dire need and something that seems to be prevalent within the industry. You've set the stage for me through the story. It might not be a customer story, but if I remember right, in sneak peek, I actually saw the pitch beforehand, and actually, I remember this. He's his own customer, right? He's selling, he's using the product himself, and so, he is the customer. He is the user story in this case. So, great start already. I'm loving it.
could have been used for patients who needed them if pharmacies could communicate. Now, pharmacies are already able to buy and sell from each other. However, they lack the tools to do so properly, and that is the problem that we solve. So why is now the right time for InStockRX? Now, pharmacies are facing increasing economic pressures. They need to operate more efficiently and can't simply ignore that waste that you saw in that other photo. There's significant regulatory changes that are also going to be going into effect that make these documentation for pharmacy-to-pharmacy transactions necessary. So we have to properly document how pharmacies do this. And finally, pharmacies are out there looking for a solution to this problem, and we have already built the critical piece of infrastructure to make it a reality. And this.
So with the why now, I know that there's the rule of three and you want to try to stuff three things. I probably just focus on detailing what specifically those regulatory things are. Because, you know, when you're just moving urgency, there's nothing that says urgency, like the government is making me do something, right? And so, you know, when we look at this, probably just looking at regulatory shift as being the reason for why pharmacists need to move. Winner takes most, economic pressures, like, that's kind of macro environment stuff, right? Which, you know, presumably these pharmacies are already under, like, strain for these things. Specifically, like, I don't know if, like, that's, like, a why now. That's, like, a totality of, like, why in general. But in terms of, like, when he was discussing, like, why now? Well, hey, there's a major regulatory shift. detail it specifically, I can point to like the FDA is requiring us to do X, Y, and Z, or some government law or diktat is forcing pharmacies to be on a specific standard. It really follows like the companies who work on like SOC 2 compliance and other related kind of compliance-y related stuff. Those companies are projecting urgency through these regulatory shifts, and it's a real big focus, right? Climate companies do the same. They'll be mentioning the Paris Peace Accords and this and that, and new regulations from individual states, like why companies to be compliant in particular things. That would probably be a much simpler way to discuss why now. But so far, this pitch has been going great.
This is our team. We combine pharmacists, experienced technologists, seasoned pharmacy sales reps, and serial founders in order to make this a reality. And what we provide for pharmacies is a solution that combines a SaaS-based inventory analytics tool, helping pharmacies better understand what's going on at their location, a marketplace to complete these transactions compliantly, and finally, our proprietary in-stock search engine allows patients to be connected with pharmacies when they're searching for medications. And this is the tool that our pharmacies are using right now as we speak to help with their business, both combining their analytics, their marketplace, as well as their drug search engine to help turn waste into profit and be connected with patients who are searching for medication.
So this has been going great. I'll kind of project a little nitpick or a little improvement that I would probably make. So when you're, I should have looked at the time. What was it? Okay. When you're presenting these different value propositions and revenue sources, they connect it in with the portion of the dashboard that works there, right? And so I think it'd be a really cool visual to see like the dashboard filling in with like your explainer graphic. You have those three right there. Like, boom, this part is for the inventory analytics. This part is for the marketplace. This part is for the prescription search. And like, bam, this is all of it together in one dashboard. And that's like a powerful visual. It helps people walk through step by step. I understand that you're creating some extra slides, but remember, difference between slide deck and pitch deck. Pitch deck, it's a visual behind what you're saying. You control how people move through it. A slide deck that you email, this would probably look better. Although, this screen, it's harder. It's kind of, you lose a little bit of focus from an audience perspective, even if you're trying to pay attention, because you're looking at each of these individual things. I can see like, oh, there's marketplace earnings over there, marketplace opportunities, wholesaler bill, inventory on hand. Like, I'm like reading through a lot of that stuff. I'm not paying attention to you. And like, I have no context of like the value props of the previous slide onto your actual product itself, right? So, just a minor improvement there. I think that it's fine the way that it currently is, but it can be better. And so that's what we're kind of striving towards. Love this. Love how this pitch is going on so far. So let's get back to this gentleman.
We're starting with the independent pharmacy owners for a couple different reasons. First of all, I am one of them. I know this segment extremely well. There's over 20,000 of us out here in the United States. It's very easy to get in front of the key decision makers for these businesses, and they love opportunities to generate additional revenue for their business.
So I'll say that when he discusses this, I feel like there's probably a better way to conjoin the team slide and this discussion about personal credibility, right? And being able to even bring it forward in front of the team slide and being like, hey, and how do I know this? Because I'm a pharmacist, right? And the story at the beginning kind of laid the groundwork for that. Like, I think maybe there's a potential of, like, reordering that a little bit to kind of fix the flow a little bit in terms of, like, I'm a pharmacist and at the beginning, right? And this is my pharmacy and this is some of my employees and this is the problem that we're having, right? And I think that just a little bit of a clear beginning to the story at the beginning kind of removes the need for that last slide. It's a minor nitpick and maybe something that will, like, you can conjoin with the team slide at some point. Like, but like I feel like a stronger thing at the beginning to be like, hey, I own a pharmacy at the beginning. Like, this is my picture, this is my credentialing at the beginning. I have a problem. I went out and found that other people have this, other pharmacy owners also have this problem. It's a whole industry-wide problem. I've struck out and gone out and built it. And if you saw the video about my investment thesis, this is great. This is great. This fits.
And so far, during our time at Techstars, we've been doing phenomenal. We've engaged with 375 pharmacies onto our platform and are partnering with key supply chain partners, including pharmacy management systems, to bring thousands of pharmacies into our network. The interesting thing that we've noticed as we continue to grow and engage with more pharmacies is a viral nature to what we're doing. For every one pharmacy that we end up bringing on board, they typically end up inviting multiple other pharmacy owners in their own area, creating their network, and essentially that ends up increasing the number of marketplace transactions that we have and drastically cuts down on our cost to acquire new customers.
So I understand what he's making the point of, I guess, and maybe it's just where I'm at in my head, but for some reason there was like a brief like kind of red flag poking up of like, well, that kind of sounds, it looks at like a glance like MLM, but he's discussing word of mouth, right? And so it was just a funny thing that popped into my head. I'm like, that sounds like multi-level marketing, but no, it's totally different. It's just like at a glance you're like, oh, and then no, he's just discussing about word of mouth. I think there's a different way to present about word of mouth, right? It's usually like a CAC conversation, CAC LTV, like word of mouth, very low cost to acquire that customer, maybe providing like a little bit of capital towards equipping, a customer with a way to, like how Robinhood gives you like, I don't know, $5 or whatever, like when you invite someone onto the platform, you give them $5, and like that $5 is the cost of acquiring a customer, and it's totally worth it because their lifetime value, right, their LTV is way higher than $5, right? And so in this case, that's probably a CAC LTV conversation, but obviously probably don't want to provide the specific numbers in this case, but just that's probably the way that I would want to discuss it. Then, this kind of discussion about like grassroots growth. I mean, I get it after like I processed it, but again, the discussion about like trying to smoothen out the pitch, make it flow really well. You don't want to get people hung up on different stuff, and I got hung up on a weird thing, but just beyond that, like just being like, our word of mouth is super strong. For every pharmacy that we do get, they love our product, and they're, they have a, like 33% of them, 66%, 50% of them introduce another pharmacy onto the platform, or introduce multiple pharmacies onto the platform. So we've had really great growth from word of mouth. That's kind of a go to market discussion, and I think it's powerful. It's a traction point, and it's something to be proud of, right? If fill in the specific numbers, but that'd probably be, in my opinion, the way to structure that one a little bit better.
So if you take a step back and think about the pharmacy supply chain 5 years from now, we believe that InStockRX is going to be at the center of it. So please book a meeting with me to learn more and to join us on our journey. Thank you so much.
So great. Clap, 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 clap. I really enjoyed that pitch. I think that there's kind of a personal connection, user story there, just because this gentleman, I've forgotten the name, but that's why you include the name on the last slide, so that the investor is reminded of it, of your name. But did a great job. I felt the passion from it. In some sense, a little subdued. Needs a little bit more energy, but overall, yeah, I was really excited about that pitch. I thought, going with that story, totally understand the context of why there's a problem, what needs to be solved, all those different types of things. I think a little bit stronger of like how the solution fits in with like a typical day-to-day use case, right? Whether it's with the pharmacy techs or with the pharmacists themselves, like go through that story and just discuss like, hey, this is what they typically do. This is where the waste comes from. But hey, by using this platform instead, they're doing that. But that's like from some of the previous pitches, which needed a full rework at the beginning. This is probably like just a little slight tweak. You're not talking about like a full teardown rebuild. It's just a little remodel, and it's a minor one at that, right? So, ultimately, I loved the pitch. Maybe a little bit of some of the ordering and how you explain certain things, but some of the stuff other than the story at the beginning, which it's a little bit of a change. I think for the better, but other than that, everything else was kind of a nitpick. And so yeah, I think this was a really high quality pitch and something that really, flips a bulb in my head, right? I'm like, oh. So let's go to the tier lists. Alright, so from where InStockRX's logo is at, you can kind of see where I'm kind of making my decision. I think I'm going to put them at an A. There's, I think that it's a good company, and I think there's really strong potential there. The evaluation is not actually on the company itself. It's on where I think the industry is going. So in terms of like a macro trend, I'm worried about in-person pharmacies in general. Just thinking about like companies like a Techstars alum PillPack, right, and others. Just kind of thinking about where that goes, right? Amazon with its One Medical. So this is more of a macro conversation of why I wouldn't put it on an S. This is probably something that may become an S if I had a discussion with different folks within the field, right? And within pharmaceuticals and pharmacy, in the pharmacy space in and of itself. Like, if I have more of a stronger understanding, it might move me more towards an S if I'm not worried about, what was it? Cost Plus from Mark Cuban, or Amazon with its One Medical acquisition, legacy companies like PillPack and other stuff like that, where it seems to be moving more away from brick and mortar, right? I don't think the marketplace is necessarily independent from that, but I didn't think I heard like there was going to be like an inventory management, like the Amazon for pills, right? I know other companies have done that, like PillPack. So the company sounds like it's a great opportunity, but the opportunity might be dwindling, right? Because brick and mortar pharmacies, I'm not sure about their staying power, right? And I might be totally wrong, totally off base. This is just my impression. It needs more research, but just because of that hang up, and that has nothing to do with the company in and of itself, but this is just from a macro trend. So I can't like put it in the S tier because it's not in where I believe the overall future macro trend is going. But overall, in terms of the pitch, I've got to say this pitch is like, a little bit more energy, the charisma, but I think it's just down to like an individual personality there. I'm willing to give it like a high A. I love the pitch, and I think that it was a really great thing going there. The branding, the orange, and some of that stuff on the pitch deck. I know it's the company colors. It's a little harsh. Some of the designs feels a little not the most polished. There's a bit of words on there, which kind of, between the difference between a slide deck and a pitch deck, there's a lot more slide decky stuff in there than necessarily stuff that goes on a pitch deck, because what you're saying doesn't need to be repeated on the slide. It just needs to be like, the main takeaway of this portion is this, right? So, kind of can't be an S tier just because of that, right? But totally understand some companies, they don't have the time to make a slide deck and a pitch deck separately. If only someone was creating a product to be able to help companies to do that. Coming soon. And just for the pitch itself, I think also, actually I'll just grab the same size here, put it in there. I think it was a great presentation, great pitch. Can feel some of the passion from like the personal connection and like why it's important. Created some kind of emotional argument, right? Like people are having medicine shortages and that type of stuff. Like it's part of the industry, but being able to craft that into the story, great. So yeah, I thought it was a really effective pitch. Certainly makes me interested. But S tier, that's like you gotta be like on top of your biz to be in S tier. Like I'm calling up my my friends at Techstars, being like, I want to talk to this founder right now. Looks great. I think this was the best presentation so far. I'm ready to see who is there an S tier in here. Can't wait to check it out. All right, we're on to our fourth pitch for the Techstars Boston Demo Day. Just wanted to say real quick that Eva is a friend of mine. I've known her for about a year or so now, but as she is very well aware, I'm going to be fair and balanced in my criticisms, but, just know that she's a personal friend of mine. I'm rooting for her, and, I'm excited to rewatch her pitch.
Hi, my name is Eva, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Rewire Health. We're a revenue-generating technology company building the tools to improve lifelong nutrition for all. Envision a world where at every stage of life and at every diagnosis, you weren't told just what to eat, but instead guided in how to do it. But despite the fact that the food we eat can reverse nearly 70% of chronic disease, we're left not knowing how to take the first step. Let's take Alex's story. Alex immigrated.
So she's going into a user story. Great. Love seeing my friends do the things that I recommend. I don't think I have to actually talk to her about this. But, just going back to the previous slide, she said a figure. It'd be nice to have the figure on the screen, especially, it's a pretty poignant figure. I've already forgotten what it is, right? Because I'm more, reading at each of those words, right? And so, if the big takeaway is that 70% of people, from what I know about her company, probably something about obesity, right? Americans, fat, we get it, right? But, just to frame, the story and make it understanding. I think it was chronic illnesses, actually, something about that. But, just like figure, like label, context, all that stuff on a single slide. Great, lay out the framework. She's about to go into her story. I'd like to start.
To the U.S. 10 years ago and battles with a recent diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. And despite wanting to eat healthier and working with a healthcare provider, he's still left not knowing where to start. And Alex is not alone. Alex is just one of 180 million adults in the U.S. today lacking essential nutrition knowledge. And like 60% of adults, Alex has both chronic disease and unmet social needs, a crisis that's costing the U.S. over $1 trillion per year. Although nutrition intervention is the first line of treatment for chronic disease, our healthcare system has let Alex down. And the reasons? Care is neither personalized, actionable, nor efficient.
So before she goes on from there, right? So I like the framing of the story. She threw out a lot of figures there. So the ability to be able to put figures onto slides, to be able to, internalize those into the head, there. Again, a pitch deck, a lot of people worry about slide length or the length of a pitch deck, right? It's not the pitch deck that you have to be worried necessarily about the slide length or the amount of slides. Oh my goodness, I can't say it. The amount of slides within a pitch deck, it's actually the slide deck. So when you email a slide deck to someone, if it's super long, 30 slides long, right? Even, the suites area is probably around 10 to 11 slides, plus the title slide, your company name and logo, all that stuff. Once it gets beyond like that 10, 11, it starts looking a little bit too long. But on a pitch deck, it's different because the pictures and the text that you're putting on screen accent what you're saying. So even if it's in a Zoom call, right, I'm focusing on, Eva, and then I look at the screen, and then I go back to her, back to the screen, context dependent. I'm not staring at her. That would be weird. So being able to divert my eyes and looking at a piece of text that words are going to be going into my head, right? Great. That's how it should work in a pitch deck. So having extra slides to kind of flip through, nobody's going to be counting the number of slides that you're going through, right? Don't go overboard. Don't need to have things for every single thing. But, when you have figures and you're providing emphasis on each of those individual figures, it's good to have them on individual slides, all right? And so that's kind of the difference, why I impress upon the difference between a pitch deck and a slide deck. You can't take your slide deck and use it efficiently as a pitch deck, right? So just a couple thoughts there. But overall, in terms of the content of the pitch, we're off to a good start.
At Rewire Health, we are tackling these challenges head on. Our novel technology enables a healthcare provider, like Alex's dietitian or his physician, to take a single nutrition concept and scale it to hundreds of thousands of unique and personalized versions, rooted in practical learning and relevant to Alex's medical needs, language, culture, and so much more. We're also unlocking unique data, providing insights to providers that would have been otherwise missed. For a provider, this means more time on patient care. And for Alex, we improve his self-efficacy, confidence, and his decision-making.
Good. So clear delineation between who is the user, Alex, and who is the customer, right? The dietitians, right? So I think that, or at least we'll see, actually, I need to make sure about that the dietitian is actually the ultimate customer, right? So when you're mentioning that, right, are they one half of a marketplace user? Are they, customer? Again, these are the cues that I'm taking away from your pitch. And so, it's fine. Use your story into, hey, this is actually a huge opportunity. So kind of a user story into a TAM, into a customer, right? Totally fine, because from just what it sounds like, her company is a B2B2C company, right? And so being able to have the user story dovetailing into the customer story, because those two groups are distinct. The users are separate from the customers. The customers are the people who pay for it. The users are the users. Users can be customers. Customers are not always users, right? So just wanted to make that particular note there.
Rewire Health is at the center of a massive market opportunity where the world is at a pivotal point, focusing far more on food as medicine than ever before. And with anticipated regulatory and policy changes over the next year, we expect to see increased adoption.
Good. So one of the things that I saw was lacking from a lot of the other slides, and look, it's a hard number to get. I totally understand. There may be figures online or in a news article that you might be able to quote. Usually nice to see some form of CAGR, right? Like some form of, what's the easy way of saying it? Like, hey, this is the amount of money that's being spent within this industry now. Here's how much it's going to be growing over time, right? And that's usually called CAGR as the acronym. But just because of, when we're discussing TAM like this, if you're in a market that you're anticipating growth in, right, bam, put that in there. In the last pitch that I looked at about the pharmacies, right, CAGR would be a great metric to look at, because from my intuition about, and from my, knowledge of the industry, I'm assuming that the TAM might be either stagnant or shrinking, right? The amount of brick and mortar pharmacies out there and how that market might be shrinking as opposed to expanding. If you have the actual metric to be able to point to, hey, no, actually this market opportunity is growing, great, that kind of allays my concern, right? And so in this case, if you're talking about growth, like represent it in some form of CAGR metric. Usually it's in a percentage, though you might put that as like an expectation of hitting X amount of billion. You usually see that in news articles, right? And if there's a, growth rate over a particular, period of time, usually annually, then that's great as well. And usually that grows exponentially over time, then plateaus, but hopefully the plateau is in the far future, right? But usually people don't really forecast plateaus. They're just talking about year to year. So just a minor quibble there.
The food as medicine movement is undeniable, and with solutions like Rewire Health, can save the U.S. healthcare system $13 billion annually. Our unique position in this space, driven by our use of hyper-personalization, culinary medicine, and channel partnerships, sets us apart, and we can provide value to multiple sectors in this space.
So before we move on, and I think I kind of see some of the names there, but something a little bit more effective that founders can do when they talk about their go-to-market strategy, label who at those organizations are your ICP, right? And so if we just go back real quick, health systems and payers, community-based organizations, private practices, and providers, just provide who that ICP is, right? And be, just because, like, if I'm an investor and I start thinking about how can I help this company, right? Being able to provide introductions to X, Y, and Z, just being able to put that there explicitly, very helpful.
Sets us apart, and we can provide value to multiple sectors in this space. Using an annual B2B SaaS model, we've worked with renowned healthcare and community-based organizations, generating over $100K in revenue since launching just earlier this year. And over the last few weeks, we've added provider membership to the platform and added 20 new providers.
Nice. So she put logos, customer logos. Those things matter, especially in something like healthcare, right? Being able to put not necessarily a face to the name, but a logo to the name, right? She could have written 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 organizations, right? 9 pilots in a particular organizations, whatever. Putting an actual logo there, you're looking through and you're like, oh, I kind of recognize Penn State, I recognize Providence, recognize what looks like the YMCA, maybe some other stuff, but you're providing connectivity points, right? Ways for an audience member to be able to connect to things that you're working on, right? And whether, it's something prestigious, maybe not, but you're still providing those opportunities for people to connect with you, right? And that's always great. And I don't think it breaks up the flow in any way. And it's good. It's good to have. I will say, though, her alignment of the text, it's not aligned. So we're kind of having a little, they're not on the same level. So minor design quibble there.
Our team is based of healthcare experts, operators, and technologists, and even healthcare providers. And we are the team to execute this vision.
Quick, there's a little formatting error there where the E drops down. So there's a minor quibble, but just from a design perspective, it distracts from this is a great little background accent to the photo, right? Also the font. I'm not the biggest fan of the font, but it's alright. It's like a healthcare-y font, so that's fine. Anyways, let her finish your pitch.
So please join us in rewiring the future of healthcare together. Thank you.
All right, so good job. Just some things there, right? The ICP specifically, who you're specifically selling to, I could piece it together that it's dietitians at, a larger hospital, private practice, etc., etc. That's what I'm piecing together, and it's a B2B2C, so the downstream client is the user and potentially customer if they're the payment flows upstream through the dietitian. But it's a good pitch. She has decent energy. I think everyone was sick and tired that day. It's in the afternoon, but cold. But hey, that's what makes Boston startups so special. The cold built some grit. So, as I'm staring at snow outside. Overall, yeah, minor quibbles here or there. Loved the user story. Loved being able to connect with someone, right? You're like, we're here to help Alex and other people. Lots of other people like him, right? And so you can see how the story starts reinforcing a narrative, even subconsciously, in the viewer's mind, whether it be an investor, a customer, potential mentor, potential advisor, potential door opener, whatever you want to call it, call that viewer, right? In their mind, they're able to do connection points. I think now that I'm thinking it out, just right at the end, if you're able to put a name to the dietitian, be able to put like, hey, this dietitian at X location, make it a customer testimonial. Customer testimonials always make the best stories, right? Especially if they're willing to give a quote, like, I love using, in this case, Rewire Health. It allows for me to do X, Y, and Z, and that's so important to me as a person who's, building my own private practice. Being able to have a platform that enables me to do X, Y, and Z makes my life so much easier, makes me able to get more customers, and ultimately build a thriving business. And it's all thanks to Rewire Health. Great, love the customer testimony. It doesn't have to be a video. Don't put a video in there. Don't stick someone else's, one speaker, but, being able to put the quote up on the screen, great. Greatness there. So, fair and balanced. We'll jump over to the tier list, and I'll give my final evaluation. All right, so try my best to be fair and balanced, all right? There's a lot of solid traction that I'm able to see on the screen. I don't know if the strong team was articulated as well, because her sister is like a whiz in this field, and, the strong team in other areas too, CTO, COO, CMO, all those C-suite. So the C-suite's solid. So I don't know if that would necessarily came through in the pitch, but in terms of just like the story, knowing who to help, it's an emerging problem, and it's being addressed in a novel way. All really, really impressive. I think that InStockRX, if we're just using like the position of some of these pitches in like relative terms to each other and just resizing it so that it's the same size, maybe like about here-ish. I probably, I'm trying to think of again, fair and balanced. I remember things about Rewire Health, but is it because I'm friends or is it because it's from the pitch? But no conflict, no interest is also another thing. My goodness. Oh, is it going up there? I think ultimately the thing that makes it a little bit challenging for me is while the user story is there and the dietitian story is there, the direct ROI of the product wasn't as well articulated, other than being a life-saving product. Ultimately, there is a money component to it, and I don't think that was as well as discussed as InStockRX did. And so, because of that, you still got an A. Obviously, take that, hang it up on the fridge, kitchen fridge. But I do think that the customer ROI was more well articulated in InStockRX's pitch. As for the pitch deck, this might be the first instance. I'm gonna knock this down. I think that the Rewire Health, although I don't like the font, had some minor design issues, but InStockRX's pitch deck kind of was a little bit too busy for my taste in some of the slides. Rewire Health also kind of did, so I think as a whole, we might be knocking this category down a little bit. You need to watch me review every single pitch, because I might rechange the tier list. You can't just, rest on your laurels, so I think maybe just kind of being able to have a frame of reference to each other. Yeah, that's probably where I would put these. For now, I'm not going to move the other two. And as to the pitch itself, I think that it had a little bit more energy. Things are a little bit clearer, and I'm just going to put it as this for now. So overall, I think that InStockRX, basically the content of the pitch made InStockRX sound better. But in terms of like the delivery, I think that Eva had a better delivery than InStockRX. Also, I don't know the guy's name, and I can't remember it because he didn't put his name at the end of the presentation. So, you leave your name there, you're allowed to have a last impression. Technically, Eva didn't either, but you get a little bump from being a friend of George, being a friend of mine. So, take that to the bank. You can't. So, maybe you can sometimes. All right, so that was Rewire Health. On to the next startup.